Okay, check this out. This is basically the final seat position. So we're just barely in front of the hoop, just below it, squared up. That notch we put here was way bigger than necessary, but that's okay. Here's that tight section. You can see we got our braces in there. Boom, boom, boom. These are the ones over here, looking nice. I like that I did 3 of each on each side. And man, when you sit in the seat, so I haven't welded the plates to the floor, but yeah, it's kind of like you'd expect. It is extremely rigid. There's hardly no movement. So I like that. Here's the back. So you can see that circle. We are kind of just barely, sorry the focus is going crazy, but basically we barely got enough room to get a tube there, which is what we're going for. Get that seat as far back as possible. And from the perspective, that cross is probably going to come somewhere in this region, so if I put the camera there, you can see that then you have a pretty good shot of that circle. So, looks like that's going to be good. And then, this is the reason we did a lot of this work. One of them was to open this area up for a rocker bar. I need to get a tube through here. So, it looks like that's going to work out. We got these kind of low enough that they'll be out of the way. So, it's looking good. I think the seat's basically done, or damn close. I think at this point, we got to take a Sharpie and kind of make some marks for where these plates go. Pull the seat, take the plates off, put the plates back on the floor, just fully mark out where they're going to go. And we need to grind all the paint off the car where those seat brackets are now going to weld to the floor pan. We need to get that prepped, which is, you know, it's just part of the job. It's not the most fun part, but it is part of the job. So we need to do that. Then we'll basically set the plates on the floor, tack weld them. Well, I guess we'll probably bolt them to the seat and then put them back, tack weld, and that'll be the first time that we can take the bolts out and pull the seat out of the car with, you know, with it in the car like this. One thing I'm just kind of realizing, but I can't do much about it, putting these washers in on this side, I mean, it'll be doable. I can get my hands in here, but that is going to suck a little bit. But I needed those to be removable. For all those thinking, just tack weld the washer to the part. Well, that kind of defeats the purpose, because the seat's not straight, it's tapered, and it's like a dovetail in a sense, locking it in place. So those spacers need to be removable for that purpose. But which is funny because they sell a bracket that goes here, and I guess it's just thin aluminum and it flexes, so that's just not a problem. But not the case with ours. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and do that. I want to go ahead and wrap this up just so we can say the seat is kind of like a 100% check mark. I think we'll get everything prepped. Like I said, we'll go through all the steps, making sure we don't mess up our fitment and positioning. And when we're all done, I think the very last thing we're going to do is put it all back and tack weld the plates. And we'll leave it at that. We're not going to fully weld them to the car yet, because you never know. We might need to pop those out for some reason. I can't foresee why, but that doesn't mean it won't happen. And we have access to these plates. The access is good, so that's not an issue. So we'll just tack them in, and that'll be basically finished short of full weld, which is pretty much how we're trying to get everything. So we will do that, and then keep going. We'll kind of check that off the list. But man, this has been a big one. The seats, that's pretty important and difficult. And I like how this turned out. This seat, like, look where your back is going to be in the seat, you know? Imagine, like, you are way far back in the car this way, which is exactly what I was going for. So that gives me lots of leg room, makes it easy to run the pedals and all that. And it'll make ingress and egress easier as well, because we're going to have a cage and hoops and tubes and diagonals, and we got to climb over all that stuff. I didn't want to do swing out bars, even though it's allowed. Not really my thing. I feel like you'd end up climbing over them half the time. You wouldn't want to pull the pins and stuff. And it's not as strong and safe or rigid as far as I'm concerned. I'd rather weld all that and it just be one unit for chassis rigidity. So that's what we're doing. But our goal was, you get the seat as low as possible, as far back as possible. That means our diagonals can also be low, and that'll give us more room between that bar. You know, that bar will be somewhere here, but it won't be as hard to get over since we got the seat kind of where we have it. So anyway, super excited about this. I could ramble for 20 minutes. That feels awesome to make some good progress on the seat. So we're going to keep going, try to get this wrapped up. Okay, so we just got done. We got the plates tacked to the floor. It did seem to shift slightly. It's a bit harder to get the seat in and out, and it is doable though, but it doesn't just fall in there, and kind of was afraid of that would happen. So we ended up leaving out the spacers on this side. They're really not necessary. You could get them in there if you tried, but it's tight. That plate, I guess something moved slightly when I tacked them in there. So I do have the spacers on this side, just not on the other. But yeah, that's fine. She's in there, and that's what's important. Luckily, the seat's aluminum, so you can always kind of finagle it in there. But man, so I sat in the seat, and holy crap, it is rigid. That sucker is just glued to the floor. It's like it's part of the car. So I can tell how that's going to be nice for racing. You're really with the car. So very happy with that. Yeah, just awesome. We went through our list and basically checked everything off except the final welding to the floor. We're just avoiding that in case we, for some reason, need to remove them during the cage fab. Other than that, she is good. And we'll go to the next thing on the list, which I think is shoulder bar. Yeah, so this was seat. We did that. Yeah, next one's shoulder bar. So I got to go look at the rules, because the shoulder bar, I think that's one of the tubes we said we could use instead of using this 1 5/8 095, we can use like a smaller, thinner or something to save weight. And I did buy some of that just as a sneak peek. There's a whole thing of tubes here. Those rusty ones are the big, heavy, beefy ones, but these other sizes are different diameters and wall thicknesses. I looked up the rules, which tubes could be what, and went ahead and purchased them. That way we could try to save a few more pounds out of the car where we can. So anyway, we're gonna go run to the store, and when we get back, we're gonna get on this shoulder bar. Hey guys, welcome back. So we're making more progress. We got our seat put in the last episode, or last video. So we're gonna work on our crossbar. So this one has a few rules that go with it. We'll go over that in a second. And I'll show you the material that we're going to be using. So all of this tube here is chromoly. So it's real strong. And because of the rules, if you use chromoly, you can use thinner tube to save weight. So that's why we did that. So let's look real quick. Let's see, shoulder bar. So this one, as long as you use chromoly, you can actually run 1 1/4 065. Now the rest of the cage is 1 5/8, and it's actually 095, even though 083 is allowed. So this is way, way lighter than what we've been using, which is nice, saves weight. It's less welding too, and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, there's rules for this. Let's see. So this is kind of my summary of the rules. So you must have a crossbar for seat bracing and as the shoulder harness attachment point. So we haven't got to the seat bracing yet, but we will eventually. Crossbar must be installed no more than 4 inches below and not above the driver's shoulders or to sidebar. Come back to that. Haven't thought about that. But this part, this is key. No more than 4 inches below and not above. So we got anywhere from basically at the shoulders to 4 inches below. Now I'm kind of assuming this means the top of your shoulder, not like the center of your shoulder. I don't know. There's some other stuff in here, like right here it says sidebar must pass the driver at a midway point between the shoulder and elbow. So I'm kind of using like the top of the shoulder and the bottom of the elbow. I think that's reasonable. And then it says at a midway point. So we'll do that, but I want to keep this bar as low as possible. Anyway, that's enough of the rules. Let's look at how we're doing this. So what I did, I took my camera stand and I set it up over here, and I got it like basically right like a side view, kind of like this. And you can use like commands and be like, hey, for example, if you say smile, a Google phone will take a picture. So I was like, okay. So I just set the camera up, sat in the car, and I grabbed the steering wheel and steering column, which we need to talk about that later. But I set those up, and I was basically like holding the steering wheel, had my feet on the pedals, and took a picture. And then using that picture, you can see I put a mark right here that says top of shoulders. And they said we can go 4 inches below, which is this mark. That's 4 inches, which also happens to line up right here. I just transferred it to the body. And then down here, this was the bottom of the elbow, and this would be the top for what it's worth. So if you do the bottom of the elbow, to the top of the shoulder, this is the midpoint right here. It's essentially about 7 inches. So that's the midpoint. We need that other tube. The diagonal tube is going to cross at that height when it goes past me, roughly. So with all that said, the bottom of this orange piece is pretty much lined up with this mark, as you can see. Yeah. So this is our 4-foot level. It's a pretty damn good level, and I just used some clamps to clamp it up. And we got the little thing here. I'll show you both of these. So we got our bubble, which is, you know, good, but I got this digital one too. And it's pretty much showing 0. It was showing 0 a second ago. So they're both pretty much in agreement. We are pretty much dead on. So we're going to transfer that mark to this side, and then we're going to pull a tape measure and see what this length needs to be. Now remember, these have to be coped to fit that tube. So even though this tube is a smaller diameter, the coping has to match the diameter that it's bumping into. So since that's 1 5/8 inches, we're still going to cope it with an 1 5/8 inches cutter. And like I said, the key is getting this length right. We want that tube to fit in here decent. So with that said, we're going to transfer our mark, grab a tape measure, and mark this up. Actually, yeah, I think we're going to do it that way. I was just trying to think, like, if this is clamped, there might be a way to get a square. You know, we might try that. I just thought of this. I don't have one handy, but let me pause the video. I'll show you what I'm thinking. This is what I was thinking. You can take a square and just basically run it across here, bump that pipe, and make a mark. And if I did that on both sides, you could just measure between the marks, and that would be a perfect measurement. Only problem is over here, I got the seat in the car. I'd have to pull the seat to be able to do that. But anyway, we'll think about that. That might make it a little easier to measure. But anyway, no big deal. Just a random thought.